Hey guys, Whitney here. Welcome to another episode of the Ash Wealth Show. We do this show every week to help you demystify parts of the investing process. Maybe you've tried to invest before, but got stuck in analysis paralysis and lost all your confidence. Or maybe you've invested in a few deals, such as like real estate and notes and other income producing assets, and you just hit a ceiling of growth with your portfolio. Or maybe you just feel so overwhelmed by all the information out there that you're plain stuck. If this is you, you've never invested before, or you've done several investments under your belt, you are in the right place. You see, I started off much like you. I started off in 2002 doing live-in flipping and house hacking, and I was able to build up buckets of equity, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I thought that I was wealthy. Well, you see, all I did, I had gotten myself another job. Not only I didn't have the income coming in on a regular basis to achieve financial independence, I didn't have my time back, which is true wealth. And as you can see here, this is the whole reason why I participate in a passive investing is so I can spend time with my family, my friends, and travel the world. And, and quite honestly, in 2020, just be home with my family. Anyways, it wasn't until a few years later that my husband and I figured out how to convert those buckets of equity into cash flow and modest equity build so we can continue to accelerate our investing growth. And fast forward today, we have several assets under our belt, largely in multifamily real estate, both on the equity side as a limited partner and a general partner, but also on the note side. And quite honestly, none of this was possible until we actually built our core foundation of our 30 cash flowing assets. And you see, this is where I see a lot of people that are so starry-eyed by the little bit of the pyramid or a little bit of the top of the iceberg that's poking out of the water, that they forget everybody had to start somewhere. And this is the base of our iceberg. The base of our pyramid was learning how to use other people's money, and that's including bank money, to build our core portfolio of cash flowing assets. And we did this all while working a normal job, being parents, spouses to each other, and taking care of our family. So I know you can do it too. But what makes what I'm going to share today so different? Well, I'm going to share, through these episodes, I share with you bits and pieces of my investing journey, but really it boils down to the three things that I discovered over 18 years in investing that you have to have. One, you have to have a specific investing roadmap that will get you to financial independence in a fraction of the time than if you didn't have one. And then you have to have a formula for a simple, repeatable system and a team in place to help you execute those systems. All right. Otherwise, you just have yourself another job. And now you have to learn how to scale. How can you leverage other people's money, other investor money, bank money, and stuff like that smartly in order to accelerate your wealth build? All right, guys. Now let's get into the meat of the matter today. We are going to talk about how to win the game of inflation. Now, whether you agree that inflation is going to run rampant now or in the future, and we're recording this in June 2021, I think we can all agree preparing for the potential for inflation to grow on us it is a winning strategy, right? Like, whether it happens or not, if you're preparing for it, that's amazing. So let's first demystify what inflation is. Okay, the true definition of inflation is it's the rate at which the value of your currency and the money in your hand is falling, and consequently, the general level of prices for goods and services are rising. Now, we're not going to get into a full-blown economics discussion around inflation, but inflation can come from several different areas. But let's talk about a little bit how it's measured. Okay, the most common measure to measure inflation is what we call the consumer price index. Okay, now the consumer price index, we're going to talk about it in detail in the next slide, is kind of an arbitrary number that our government puts together. Now, between what happens to the consumer price index and the increase in the money supply, these two working in tandem is the root of all inflation. Okay, and there's three different types of inflation: increase in the money supply, which devalues your money, and increase of prices in goods and services. those two things together, it was what is the root, causes the root of inflation. Now, let's pick apart the consumer price index a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to define it for you, and I've got a math equation down here for you. The consumer price index is the measure that examines the weighted average of prices of a basket of goods and services, which are of what the primary consumer, you, me, need. Now, this basket of goods that the government has, kind of put together and weighted, it only includes transportation, food, and medical. Okay, I don't know about you, but I do a lot more than eat, go get healthcare, and go drive back and forth to work. I do a lot more. Okay, and that basket of goods, say like, transportation, the average price of a car. Well, if that, if they were originally using, say like a Subaru Forester for that, the average price of a car, and the government wanted to keep the consumer price index low, they could actually remove the Subaru Forester and swap it out with a Honda Civic. Okay, so these things, this is kind of an arbitrary index. All right. Now, the problem is there's this swapping going on. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, but let's touch on how things are calculated. So we take the final CPI index value divided by the initial CPI index value. Okay, so 2 points in time, okay, where you started from, where you ended, divide those together, and then you multiply it by 100 and you get your inflation rate. Now, the targeted rate that the Fed wants to keep is around 2%. Okay, this is where we hit our conundrum. Okay, you, the individual, me as an individual, we rely on so much more than just food, transportation, and medical care to have a comfortable life. We rely on, grains, metal, food, utilities, electricity, other services like entertainment and other labor in our life. And those things aren't necessarily accounted for in the consumer price index. Okay, so the government could be telling us, the CPI, consumer price index, is 2%. Well, they're only measuring technically three things. And guess what? They get to swap out what those three things are. If the car that they've been using becomes too expensive, they just swap out the car. Okay. If the food that they were using becomes too expensive, they swap out the food. Okay. Now, I am not trying to get in any sort of political discussion. I just want to have you guys go eyes into this, eyes wide open on how these numbers are actually calculated and put together. Okay. Now, if you believe inflation is happening or not, let's take a look at the actual real data. So even since 2018, if the government's been targeting 2%, just look at this, 2%. We've been staying well above 2% for quite a while. And even since the beginning of the year, excuse me, we've been jumping up to 3, 4, and 5%. And that's just on the actual measured inflation. Okay, this isn't even being adjusted for all those other things that aren't in that CPI basket. This is just for what the Fed is measuring. So I think anybody could, come to the conclusion that inflation is actually going higher. Okay. Now, how does this affect you as the investor, right? I'm not all about, trying to scare anybody, but inflation does impact you as an investor. We're seeing increased housing prices, increased rent prices. I just did a webinar on the state of the market, so look for that. But we pick apart how asset prices and rent prices move and why investors need to be reevaluating their underwriting metrics right now. But again, I want to give you a plan that could survive any market, okay? And that is making sure that when you are investing in assets, and this isn't just real estate, but any asset, that you're abiding by the 4 wealth pillars. I call them the 4 tenets of conservative investing. One, that whatever you're going into can preserve your capital, okay? It's a hard asset, you own the title to it, it preserves capital, okay? It's uncorrelated with the general market. It's not a piece of paper, okay? That you actually have a hard, tangible asset behind it. 2, that asset generates cash flow, okay? So for my fix and flippers out there, you you can see how that might not fall into an asset that, or excuse me, that particular asset, the fix and flip might not actually abide by all these fundamental principles that hedge inflation. And not only does it need to cash flow, you want to ensure that you can use leverage to amplify the cash flow. Okay, doesn't mean that you have to, but that a bank would want to lend on it. Okay, banks are smart. They are not in the game of losing money. Okay, so if they will lend on it, that is a good indication to you as well that this might be an asset worth looking at. Okay, and if you've noted, banks don't lend for the average person to invest in stocks and bonds. There is a reason for that, and we'll tackle that in just a second. We also want to invest in assets that have a reasonable chance of appreciation. Okay, you're a fix and flipper. You might be raising your hand, going, "Well, Whitney, you just said that my fix and flip might not, meet this four wealth pillars." Well, we're fundamentally missing one of those pillars, which is the cash flow, and actually, you're missing a second pillar, which are the tax benefits. Okay, but we want to make sure we're taking care to put ourselves in a reasonable chance of appreciation. It is the icing on the cake. It's something that you can't necessarily control unless you're doing a value add strategy and you're forcing the appreciation. But you definitely want to take care, underwrite your markets, underwrite like where the underlying asset is invested in, and just make sure that you have put yourself in a reasonable path for appreciation, that you haven't eliminated it completely. And then lastly, the tax benefits. Okay. We want to be in assets that we are incentivized as investors to receive some sort of depreciation or write off on the investment, and or we can do like a 1031 exchange or something like that. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of that wealth pillar as well. Now, you don't have to hit a home run on every single wealth pillar in order to succeed and beat inflation. But even just, getting modest returns across all the wealth pillars will help you crush inflation in your portfolio. So let's kind of put this knowledge to use. Okay, so how does this apply? So let's take the asset stocks. Okay, and if we run down our wealth pillars, do stocks have a capital preservation behind them? Not necessarily. A stock can go to zero overnight. Okay. Does that happen regularly? No. But do they have capital preservation behind them? No, not necessarily. They can be divided. All sorts of things can happen to them. Can they cash flow? Some stocks do cash flow, but generally, no, not really. You can't. If you pulled that cash flow out, you are going to be paying a gain on it. Okay. All right. So there's not really a tax benefit there for you either. Do they appreciate? Yes. Stocks appreciate very well. Okay. Or they can. They have the potential to appreciate very well. That is something they do. And then tax benefits. No, there's not really any tax benefits to the actual stock investment. It's how you hold the stock investment that provides the tax benefits. All right. So looking at stocks, does it meet the four wealth pillars? Will it beat inflation? It could. It just your only pillar that you're really truly banking on is that appreciation piece. Okay. Now bonds. Okay. Let's run this through the same scenario. Do they have capital preservation? Maybe, because there's generally an asset behind that bond that's being floated. Okay. So there's probably a little bit more capital preservation to them. Do they have cash flow? Some bonds do produce a little bit of cash flow, maybe like 1, 2, 3, 4%. Okay, so we do see a little bit of cash flow to them, not anything on par with like rent to real estate or note investing or anything like that. Can they be can they be leveraged? Generally, no. Okay. Do they appreciate? Not largely. They do go up and down with the market, but they definitely don't appreciate nearly as well as stocks do. And do they have tax benefits? Maybe. I put a maybe here. And your municipal bonds generally have some sort of tax benefit to them. Okay. So stocks, bonds, not really holding very well, to running this filter of the four wealth pillars and beating inflation. Now let's take a look at a couple other investments too. You know me, I love real estate. Does real estate have capital preservation? Yes. Does it cash flow? Can you leverage it? Yes. Does it appreciate? If you buy in the right markets, it can appreciate. Okay. And also, you know, in all fairness, if you buy correctly, it can cash flow. Okay. You can screw up those two pillars. Does it have tax benefits? Yes. Life insurance. Is there capital preservation there? If you have constructed the policy properly, yes. Will it cash flow? Yes, it can cash flow both now and later if you constructed it properly. Is there appreciation? Modestly, maybe a little bit. Can you leverage a life insurance policy? Yes. If constructed policy properly, you can leverage a life insurance policy. And are there tax benefits? Yes. Real estate, life insurance, and Roth IRA accounts are the three assets that don't trigger provisional income, okay, for retirement. So yes, there are definitely some big tax benefits there. And there's other tax benefits beyond just that. All right, so this is, again, you know, take your investments, run it through this filter. And that leads me to our challenge. Make a list of all your investments, okay, and grade them on the 4 wealth pillars, right? And consider repositioning assets that fall short on these pillars into assets that have, you know, at least 3, if not 4, of the wealth pillars, okay? And do this over time. You have to work with a professional, you know, definitely with a financial advisor, a financial coach, you know, or a different type of advisor that understands all the ins and outs on how to reposition these assets, because there could be consequences to repositioning certain assets. All right. And the other thing right now that I'd really encourage people to do to beat inflation is lock in that long-term fixed interest rate debt on your properties and outsource it to somebody. This could be, you know, in a business. This can be in a rental property and outsourcing it to your tenant. But fixing this long-term interest rate debt, the rates are low, the terms at minimum 10 years. If you can get to 30-year fixed interest rate debt, why not? But that way you can write out a lot of the market. All right. So I'm sure this is a ton of information. I hope you guys, you know, really feel it was time well spent. And if you are interested in getting help with understanding the state of the market, how inflation works, how these things impact your portfolio build, if you're in a position where you need to get your portfolio started and scaled, you know, I invite you to join me in the Investor Accelerator Mastermind. This Investor Accelerator Mastermind is for somebody just starting out with investing in real estate. You know, also note investing. Maybe you've been doing this full time and you just hit a level ceiling of achievement and you just don't know what to do next. Think of this accelerator as a 4-legged table, a very strong wooden 4-legged table. Okay, we are going to provide you all those legs to make your foundation nice and sturdy. Okay, if you're missing any one of these legs, your table will fall over. Okay, we're going to give you the right education. Okay, we have it all online. You can go through it at your will. We're also going to help you craft your investing roadmap. Okay, so you're never left guessing on what you need to do next. And we're going to give you all those tools to help you build the right mindset, vision, and strategy so you can continue to level up in your investing career. We're also going to give you all the systems. Okay, I mean, give you. So you're going to get all of my tools, checklists, all my scripts, my templates. You're going to get everything that you need to begin to build and launch your business. And then we're going to teach you how to scale. Okay, we do this. We meet, you know, for the full year. We meet twice a month. And, you know, one of those sessions is focused on actual, you know, investing in business building. And the other one, we're focusing on building your network and your investment knowledge. Okay, this is for somebody who wants to collapse time, fold the paper on top of itself to make the shortest distance between 2 points just right next to each other. Okay, this is not for DIYers. This is for somebody who sees the value in being in a group of high achievers who all want to row in the same direction and are willing to help each other. And we're going to help you crush it even in between those mastermind sessions. by connecting you with various hackathons and our online community. Just imagine with an education plan, systems, and support like this, just how far could you scale your investing portfolio? Well, if you are ready to get started, hop on over to ashwealth.com/apply, fill out the quick 10-second application, and then we'll hop on the phone and make sure that this is the right plan for you.